Thank you very much. Senator Graham.
Thank you, sir. I would like to acknowledge your service for probably one of the most challenging times in American history. I really appreciate what you've tried to do for our country and your whole
Thank you, sir.
force. Mexico. You mentioned, I think, in your testimony about Border Patrol agents being killed. What's your assessment of the violence in Mexico? Is the border areas more dangerous? And where do you see this going in Mexico?
I think anybody looking at what's happened in the last several years along the border, but also inside Mexico in terms of the increase in homicides, the breakdown of to the extent that there was any cartel, I don't want to say justice, but restraint has long since been lost with the increase in homicides, despite the efforts and intent of the Calderon administration from the outset to address it. From our perspective, the concern is the violence coming north of the border. From our perspective, we've seen and had several years ago an uptick of kidnappings of individuals who may live in the United States but have businesses or family in Mexico, be kidnapped in Mexico, and the ransom sought from persons in the United States. We put together task forces to address that, and that has been reduced somewhat. We have a priority of looking at corruption along the border, and we have a number of agents that are looking at border corruption. We've had a number of cases of border corruption that we have successfully investigated. We have put together fusion squads or individuals from who are familiar with corruption, familiar with the narcotics trafficking, white-collar crime, money laundering and like, and the squads that we are using hybrid squads, we call them, to address the activities on the border. And finally, we put together an intelligence capability down in El Paso that brings in the intelligence from each of our offices, as well as from our legal attaché in Mexico City and headquarters, and we integrate that with the other players that are working on the border.
Would you say it'd be fair observation that securing our border is probably more important than ever, that criminal activity is growing and that terrorism threats are growing, and that we should really look at securing the borders as a national security imperative?
I think securing the borders has always been a national security imperative, yes, sir.
But it seems to be even more so from your testimony. Now, you mentioned something in your testimony. You should ask maybe ask hard questions, and I think that's probably good advice for us all. When it comes to Miranda warnings, is it the FBI's view that Miranda warnings are required for interviews that involve intelligence gathering for national security purposes?
If there is no intent to utilize the results of those interviews in a courtroom, and the purpose was gathering intelligence, yes, it'd be that, and that happens all the time, particularly overseas.
Is it fair to say that homegrown terrorism is on the rise?
Yes.
Is it fair to say that we need to get our laws in shape to deal with a new threat, which is people attacking us who may be American citizens themselves?
Yes.
Or here legally?
Yes.
So wouldn't it be fair to say that we should, as a nation, the Congress and the administration, try to find a solution that would withstand court scrutiny to deal with the fact that when we're facing this threat, that providing a lawyer and reading someone their rights when they may involve an act of terrorism is something we should maybe counterproductive at times?
I'm not certain I could go that far. I would say we are bound by what the Supreme Court has issued in terms of...
Do you think Congress should be involved in helping you create a solution to this problem?
I would have to. It would be nice if Congress could, but we've got the Supreme Court as the ultimate arbiter in terms of the application of Miranda to the admissibility of statements, as I'm sure.
And I totally understand what you're saying, but it's my view that Miranda warnings are not required if the purpose of the interrogation is to gather intelligence about existing threats or future threats. Because when you fight a war, you don't read people Miranda rights on the battlefield. Where is the battlefield? Is the United States part of the battlefield?
One can speculate. I know there are persons that say everything is a battlefield now.
Well, what do you
I would stay away from speculating
Well,
out of the battlefield. I
I'm
know
not
where you're
asking-
going, but
Yeah.
I'll stay away from the definition of the
And
battlefield.
in all fairness to you, I think it's pretty important to know where the battlefield is. To me, the battlefield is here at home. That we've caught people who are trying to blow us up that are connected with people in Pakistan, allegedly. So, Mr. Director, I think home is the battlefield, and we need to craft solutions in light of this growing threat. And I look forward to working, and I would urge the administration to come to Congress to see if we can work together. But under your policy guidance, this memorandum, how long can you hold someone without reading them their Miranda rights? If you catch someone here in America, an American citizen who you suspect of being involved with Al-Qaeda or some foreign entity, terrorist group, how long can you hold them without reading them their rights? How many questions can you ask them? And when do you have to present them to court?
Well, generally within 24, 48 hours, one has to make the presentment to court, at which point in time they will be read their Miranda warnings. It depends on where you might be. It may be longer if you're in not that close to a magistrate.
Let's continue to ask the hard questions. So under the policy, under the problem with presentment to court,
yes,
you're talking about 24 or 48 hours. Is that enough time to gather intelligence?
it may well be. In certain cases, we have with
Could it well not be?
it could not be.
Yeah, I mean, you might actually want to call foreign intelligence services and see, what do you know about this guy? You'd certainly want to call the CIA, you'd want to call the DOD, and you'd want to make a good assessment. I think the honest answer is that the presentment and Miranda warnings need to be looked at anew in light of the domestic, in light of homegrown terrorism, and that's just my view. And I want to invite the administration to be a good partner on this, but I just feel like we're less safe with the current policy, because the questions I've asked about how long you can hold them, 24 to 48 hours, without a presentment problem, is probably not a good solution to what I think is a growing problem. Last thing I want to ask you about is your budget. We're having a real debate up here about, cutting government, and God knows it needs to be reduced. But one thing about government, from my point of view, is the first thing you want to do is protect your citizens. You're telling me that H.R. 1, if implemented the way it is today, would cost 1,100 job slots?
We would not be able to fill 1,100 slots by September,
And that would
in order to meet the budget constrictions.
So when we're deciding what's the right number to pick, you're losing $200 million, is that correct?
Yes.
And
we
the
are.
plus up you're asking in 2012, is that really necessary?
Depending on what happens in 2011,
Right.
Will dictate to a certain extent the plus-ups in 12.
I got you.
And what we're struggling for is to get what we did not get in 2011 for 12.
Well, we're deeply in debt, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thought you might agree with me there. But you've looked at this budget from a perspective the nation is deeply in debt.
Yes.
And you're telling us, the Congress, that due to the threats that are multiplying exponentially, that you need this force to protect America.
Yes.
Thank you very much for your testimony.